In the modern era, the cruise ship has evolved into a symbol of ultimate escape, a meticulously engineered fantasy. They are not merely vessels, they are floating cities, self-contained worlds of choreographed pleasure and architectural marvels designed to insulate their thousands of passengers from the danger of the sea. Gleaming white, laden with a dozen restaurants, state-of-the-art theatres, sprawling casinos, and serene swimming pools, they represent a triumph of engineering and a promise of absolute safety and carefree luxury. The Costa Concordia, launched in 2006, was a magnificent embodiment of this promise. At over 950 feet long, with 13 passenger decks, it was a glittering monument to leisure, a beacon of the 21st century cruise industry. On the evening of January 13th, 2012, this floating paradise, carrying 4,252 people, would have its illusion of safety violently ripped away, not by a storm or a catastrophic mechanical failure, but by the reckless whim of its captain, leading to a slow, agonizing capsize that would captivate and horrify the world in real time. The Costa Concordia was on the first leg of a week-long Mediterranean cruise, La Dolce Vita. It had departed from Civitavecchia, near Rome, and was sailing north along the Tuscan coast. At its helm was Captain Francesco Schettino, a man with a reputation for a certain brand of confidence that sometimes bordered on swagger. The planned route was a well-established, safe shipping lane. However, Schettino decided to deviate from this course for a spectacularly foolish reason: to perform a maritime flyby or sail-by salute. Known in Italian as an incino, this dangerous and unsanctioned manoeuvre involved steering the massive ship perilously close to the island of Giglio. It was a gesture of pure ego, a showboating stunt intended to impress a retired cruise line commodore living on the island and to delight the family of the ship's head waiter, who was also from Giglio. It was an act of profound irresponsibility, using a 114,500-ton vessel with thousands of souls on board as a personal toy. As the ship approached Giglio, much closer to shore than any vessel of its size should ever be, the atmosphere on the bridge was dangerously casual. Schettino was reportedly on the phone, distracted, joking with others who were present, including a Moldovan dancer he had invited onto the bridge as his guest. He had taken command from his officers, choosing to navigate by sight in the dark, a reckless decision given the ship's immense size and momentum. He fatally underestimated the proximity of the island's rocky underwater ledges, known locally as Le Scole. At 9:45 p.m, the moment of impact arrived. A low grinding shudder ran through the length of the ship, a sound of immense tearing metal that passengers in the dining rooms described as a deep, violent groan. Glasses and plates slid from tables. The Costa Concordia had struck the reef, tearing a 160-foot gash into the port side of its hull below the waterline. Seawater immediately began flooding into the engine rooms and generator compartments, the ship's vital organs, in 5 separate, unsealed compartments. The initial response from the command crew was one of denial, confusion, and deception, a critical failure that sealed the fate of many. As lights flickered and the ship began to list noticeably, panicked passengers were repeatedly told over the intercom that it was simply a blackout or a generator problem, and that they should return to their cabins. This was a deliberate falsehood. For nearly half an hour, as the engine rooms filled with water and the ship was losing all power and propulsion, the bridge failed to notify the Italian Coast Guard of the true nature of the emergency. Captain Schettino engaged in a series of downplayed, confusing calls, delaying the declaration of a general emergency and the order to abandon ship. He even told the port authorities that the situation was under control, long after it was clear that the ship was doomed. This crucial lost time meant that by the time the evacuation order was finally given, well after 10:30 p.m, the ship's list had become so severe that launching the lifeboats on the high starboard side was becoming impossible. The ship, now dead in the water and at the mercy of the wind and currents, drifted back towards the shore of Giglio, a stroke of luck that prevented it from sinking in the deep open sea. It eventually ran aground on a rocky ledge, which stabilised it and began its slow, inexorable capsize onto its starboard side. The scene on deck devolved into absolute chaos. The gentle slope of the deck became a treacherous, near-vertical precipice of polished wood and metal. People screamed, cried, and slid across the tilting floors, trying to climb uphill to reach the portside lifeboats. Elevators had stopped working, trapping people inside. In the absence of clear leadership from the bridge, many crew members, particularly the service staff from across the globe, acted with immense courage, forming human chains to help elderly passengers across the treacherous decks and struggling to launch the remaining lifeboats. It was during this chaos that the most disturbing element of the disaster unfolded: the total abdication of responsibility by the captain. Francesco Schettino, the man whose arrogance had caused the catastrophe, abandoned his ship. Before the evacuation was even complete, he boarded a lifeboat while thousands of passengers and crew were still trapped on the listing, dying vessel. His actions were a profound betrayal of the most sacred maritime tradition: that a captain goes down with his ship, or is at least the last to leave. The drama was immortalized in a now infamous audio recording of a radio exchange between Schettino, now in the lifeboat and claiming he tripped into it, and Captain Gregorio De Falco of the Italian Coast Guard in Livorno. De Falco, his voice raw with fury and disbelief, orders Schettino to get back on his vessel and coordinate the rescue. When Schettino hesitates and makes excuses, De Falco bellows the line that would echo across Italy and the world: "Get on board, for fuck's sake!" While Schettino watched from the safety of the shore, a desperate rescue operation unfolded through the night. Coast Guard helicopters airlifted stranded passengers from the steepest parts of the hull. Local boats from Giglio's small port rushed to the scene, pulling people from the frigid January water. Divers began the grim, dangerous task of searching the submerged half of the ship. A dark, labyrinthine maze of floating furniture, smashed slot machines, and personal belongings. The human cost was tragic. 32 people lost their lives. Among them was a 5-year-old girl, Diana Arlotti, and her father, William, who drowned after being directed to the wrong side of the ship for a lifeboat. Others were crew members, like the Peruvian waiter Russell Rebello, who gave his own life jacket to a passenger and was last seen helping others before the ship capsized fully. The aftermath was a spectacle that lasted for years. For 2 years, the colossal pale hulk of the Costa Concordia lay on its side, off the coast of Giglio, a surreal and morbid tourist attraction. An unprecedented and incredibly complex salvage operation, the most expensive in history, at a cost of over €1.5 billion, was launched to right the ship and tow it away for scrap. The legal proceedings focused squarely on Captain Schettino, who was dubbed Captain Coward by the international press. In 2015, he was convicted of multiple counts of manslaughter, causing a maritime disaster and abandoning ship, and was sentenced to 16 years in prison. The Costa Concordia disaster stands as a chilling modern parable. It wasn't an act of God, a force of nature, or an unavoidable accident. It was a catastrophe born from a single man's vanity, amplified by a culture of lax discipline and a crew that failed to challenge his authority, and compounded by his cowardice when his recklessness had its inevitable, tragic consequences. It violently shattered the modern illusion of the unsinkable luxury liner, proving that no amount of technology or comfort can protect against the profound and devastating consequences of human arrogance.